special holiday edition of the ECNL podcast featuring ECNL President and CEO Christian Lavers, ECNL Vice President and Chief of Staff Doug Bracken, and the CEO for U.S. Club Soccer, Mike Cullina. They have a deep conversation and you will enjoy it. Before we get to that, a new segment as part of the ECNL podcast, as let's take a look around the league.
The ECNL is proud to introduce a new segment to the Breaking the Line podcast. It's called Around the League. Each podcast, veteran sports broadcaster Dean Linke will take you around the ECNL, highlighting achievements and news about current players, alumni, teams, coaches, clubs, and more to give our loyal listeners everything they want to know about the state of the ECNL in less than 2 minutes. So let's get rolling. Here's Dean.
College soccer wrapped up its postseason play, and you cannot miss the impact ECNL alumni have made on this college season. Congrats are in order for the Florida State Seminoles and Washington Huskies for capturing their national titles, and both rosters featured ECNL alumni prominently. Florida State had 20 ECNL alumni on the roster, while Washington had 22 former ECNL players lifting the trophy. The 42 alumni winning the Division I title is the most ever in league history. This year, more than 770 alumni were named to NCAA women's all-conference teams, with another 90 individual end-of-season awards going to former ECNL players. Just some of those players include former ECNL standouts Camden Fuller from Solar SC, Caroline Burkle from St. Louis Scott Gallagher, Izzy Engel from Minnesota Thunder Academy, and two-time ECNL Player of the Year Maribel Flores from Slammers FC. On the boys' side, more than 120 players were named to NCAA men's all-conference teams. Former Richmond United standout and ECNL national champion Nick Simmons from Richmond United captured the ACC Freshman of the Year award for Virginia. Former ECNL All-American and 2023 Mid-Atlantic Conference Player of the Year with Charlotte Soccer Academy, Drew Hansen, helped the UCF Knights claim the Sun Belt Conference Championship and a spot in the NCAA tournament. Hansen scored the winner in the Knights' double overtime win over Georgia Southern before scoring another game winner in UCF's upset over top-seeded Kentucky. While these are just some of the names, we are incredibly proud of all of our alumni succeeding on college soccer's biggest stage. ECNL alumni are shining on the professional stage as well. Robbie Vincent and Luke Spencer, the head coaches in last month's USL Championship between the Pittsburgh Riverhounds and FC Tulsa, both started as coaches and directors in the ECNL with Riverhounds and Louisville City Academy. While on the field, former Florida Premier standout Santiago Castaneda was recently called into the US 21 camp and has also helped his club squad to the second spot in the Bundesliga 2. PDA alum Riley Tiernan starred for Angel City FC this season. Tiernan went from an unsigned free agent to scoring 8 goals in 26 appearances for Angel City FC, making her a nominee for the NWSL Rookie of the Year award. Also around the league, the ECNL hosted the first recruitable events of the 25-26 season last month in Phoenix. More than 500 scouts were on hand to watch more than 200 ECNL girls teams compete in Phoenix, while more than 250 scouts were on hand for the ECNL boys event. The league also crowned its East Coast, Central, and West Coast Super Cup champions as Concord Fire, Dallas Texans, and XF Academy booked their spot in the ECNL Super Cup National Championship in April. The ECNL also held 3 new pre-ECNL Cups this fall that crowned dozens of champions in an incredibly fun environment for young players, with the pre-ECNL Northern Cal Cup still to come in March, and all of the pre-ECNL program culminating with the first ever Pre-CNL Champions Cup this May in Provo, Utah, to celebrate soccer at the end of the season. All right, time to get the 2026 season of Breaking the Line, the ECNL podcast, rolling. And to do that, we turn it over to Christian Lavers.
Thank you very much, Dean, for that introduction. And here we are, Mr. Bracken, in the final podcast of 2025 as we prepare to turn the page to the new year and new lots of things. And we're joined again by Mr. Mike Cullina. So welcome to you both.
Thank you. Nice to be here again, Christian, with you as always. Mike,
Always.
welcome.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
We got to have the little Christmas small talk. How was everybody's Christmas? Mike, you're the guest. What do you think?
First Christmas in which neither child woke up in our house.
Mm.
So this is
Oh,
new.
all right.
Was still very good. Obviously, both kids were there by noon. Um, but yeah, we grow, we evolve, and it is a new world for us. But it was wonderful.
Still got the wreath on the door, I see.
Last one, there's two left. By noon on the 26th, there was no recognition of Christmas at our house. Christmas goes up on the day after Thanksgiving and comes down the day after Christmas. Those are our rules. I don't make them, I follow them, and I'm happy to do it.
Oh,
Ours is a
okay.
little different. We go up early. As soon as Halloween's over, it's free game on Christmas up. But after that, day after Christmas, let's start getting it down. Let's start getting it down. So I will say this was the first year that my youngest son, who's now 13 years old, about to turn 14, didn't wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and blare Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne to wake everybody up. So we had to wake him up, which is a
There you
sure
go.
sign of teenagerhood, I think. So pretty excited about that. That was good. How about you, Lavers?
It was great. I got kids that are right in the middle of all the Christmas wonder at 8653. A lot of soccer presence, you know, chief of which was a replica World Cup trophy demanded by my middle son. So I've got a wonderfully real looking World Cup trophy that is paraded around anytime somebody wins the 1v1 or 2v2 or whatever game they play. And everybody sings Olay, and then they go on to fight about something else.
Love it. All right. Well, those are fun years because the excitement and the like build up to Christmases. There's a lot of hype. A lot of hype.
If it was as easy to get a ticket to a game in the World Cup as it is to get a replica trophy, I think I could buy about 100 replica trophies for the price of the latest tickets I'm seeing. So
Oof.
I will just
Yes.
drop that here as we head into
However,
2026.
FIFA president did remind us that without those ticket prices, 150 countries in this world wouldn't be able to play soccer at all, Christian.
Hmm.
So that is
I'm
what
unfamiliar with that
said.
statement or the factual basis behind it, so I will have to content myself with a gruff uh-huh.
That was his defense of the prices of the tickets. Mike, did you hear that? See that
Of
quote?
course, I
Yeah.
did see that quote on X.
I thought this was the cheapest sport to play. And now
I
we're
mean,
going to get
that's
so many trolls who jump on that.
probably true, but it's not. Yeah, it's not obviously cheap to go see the World Cup. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm holding out.
Hmm.
Holding out. I'm gonna wait and see.
All right. Well, we finished right before Christmas with a flurry of activity, much of it behind the scenes. We'll call this podcast Part B. Announcing the pyramid under U.S. Club Soccer in our space, our little corner of the youth soccer world. And it came out, a couple of days before Christmas. It came out after a lot of work and discussion, some of it going back years.
You know what I think it would be important for you to do, Christian, right now, though, before you start, is to explain the relationship between U.S. Club Soccer and ECNL. People may not totally understand that.
That's fair. And this is also why we have esteemed guest Mike Cullina here.
Right.
U.S. Club Soccer is the sanctioning body of the ECNL, which means they are the actual direct member of the federation. They do the background checks, player registration, coach registration, risk management, those types of backroom services for all of the leagues that they sanction. Also do coach education of all the way from grassroots up to Bs, I think. Mike, is that right?
Correct.
The B license. And then also do player identification through the ID2 program, which we obviously had partnered with even closer this year with respect to the Spotlight games and the expansion of ID2 that we've talked about on this podcast. So we got coach education, player identification, league sanctioning, risk management. Mike, am I missing anything in the U.S. club umbrella?
I think we probably provide a few more services related to, marketing for some of the other leagues. Obviously, ECNL has its own department and and a very good one. But as we're about to talk about with the NPL, we provide a little bit more there. But no, I think for the most part, you got it. I think our relationship works so well because we can focus on all of the things that have to be done to allow our sport to be safe, to allow us to understand who's on the field, who shouldn't be on the field, all of those things, making sure that our relationship with the federation is proper in terms of policies and bylaws, so that ECNL can go out and put the product on the field that you guys do in terms of managing the league and the events and the postseason and all of the kind of more technical aspects, if you will, of the sport, which I think is important. So it's a really good balance where you can focus on the things that you and your team do extremely well and are critical, and much more tangible to the players and their families. And we handle all of the things that are just necessary, morally, ethically, legally, to get done so you can go do that work.
So we got a nice hand in glove relationship, I would say, with the appropriate boundaries and checks and balances and all that sort of stuff. And I should say, because it's most relevant to this podcast, is the NPL, the National Premier Leagues, is a set of leagues that, among many, that U.S. club sanction. I mean, U.S. club sanction dozens of leagues, from recreational all the way up to the ECNL, and the National Premier Leagues were started in around 2011, 2012.
2011.
Was 2011 was the first time that the brand NPL showed up on a league. And over the last 5-7 years, we've had lots of discussions behind the scenes with U.S. Club Soccer and ECNL with respect to clubs and pathways and where teams qualify for or clubs go to within U.S. Club Soccer. None of it was formalized. None of it was real public in terms of what that looked like and what a pathway was and what a pyramid was within U.S. Club Soccer. That was sort of left up to the user, the local people, to create. And so I guess the first question is, when this announcement came out jointly from the ECNL and U.S. Club Soccer about the competition pathway, kind of begs the question to you, Mike, and speaking on behalf of the NPLs, and I know the NPLs, most of them are independently operated, but as the person and one of the people that coordinates how they work together, why now was this the time to put out for the first time a unified U.S. Club Soccer pyramid of competition?
So let's kind of go back when I was the interim. Still, Kevin Payne was still the CEO, but there was that 6 month between July of 2021 and January of 2022 where he was acting and I was next in line. We had received a letter from a number of our leagues, co-authored letter that said, "Hey, we got some questions. What is this? What are you doing about it? The world is changing rapidly with new leagues. External forces are a real threat to our business, to our leagues, and to our club's ability to manage the leagues or to manage their teams within the league. And so, we'd like some more attention put to the NPL. And I think the NPL is probably the most unique competition structure that we have because they are independent operators that manage at a very local level, within the framework of the postseason, but they manage who's in their league, how they progress to the postseason. And then once they come to the postseason, the NPL finals in Colorado, then our team manages that in July. But you have, anywhere between 18 and 21 over the last couple of years of NPLs, that every one of them has unique challenges. The East Coast is definitely different than the West Coast in terms of the challenges. Um, you have climate, you've got all the things that go into it, and where other external forces exist more directly impact those leagues. So here in Virginia, we have a variety of external leagues that are not within U.S. Club and how they operate, but that's different than what it is, let's call it California. So we started this, and that came in November of 2021, and we, for the first time, brought our leagues together in Las Vegas at the ECNL Coach Symposium that February, late January, early February, whichever it was that particular year. And from that time, we've been doing the work to get here. And I think it's important that folks understand we just didn't wake up, around Halloween and said, oh, by the way, let's put together this pyramid. This was multiple years of in-person meetings with our leagues. And Doug, I know you've been to one or two of those, and
Yep.
Christian obviously comes to all of them, of trying to work through, okay, what is this relationship like? And I think it's also not a secret that there was a period of time when ECNL's relationship with U.S. Club Soccer maybe wasn't optimal. We'll just leave it there, but that was probably true. And so that, not just with U.S. Club Soccer, but within U.S. Club Soccer, creates conflict. And routinely I've had conversations over the last couple of years, not so much recently, but more when I started here, about, sometimes it's better to just say, okay, everybody on the outside and this, everybody on the inside has to play by the same set of rules. Well, yes. However, when you have one national competition, the conflict with the localized competitions is going to be very real. And so we've been working through that, as Christian knows very well, for the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now. And we made some significant progress and answered many of the questions that they had. We addressed them, and it's like a game of whack-a-mole. Okay, well, you solved this riddle. Well, what about that one? And now here's a new league, and now here's this, and here's that. And so what we decided in the last year is let's just clean things up internally. What does it look like inside of U.S. Club Soccer? At the same time, we're having all of these conversations with U.S. Soccer and a variety of other organization members about how might we work together in a more productive way in the future. So that's happening in a parallel. And so I think it's also important to recognize that we're totally invested in those, and we will collectively show up and to those for sure. Just the timing is what it is. It's, after 3 or 4 years, here's where we got. And so at this last meeting in October, our league said to us, we're done talking about it. We're now putting this in your hands. Tell us where we're going. And so that's what we did. We took
so
all
a
of that
couple-
information over the last 3 or 4 years,
Yeah.
and then Christian and I and team, Alex Reben, the GMs, the leagues, this
And
was
I
the
would
end
say,
result of that.
and I would say part of this process of 4 years or more has included like a lot of the ECNL partnering with a lot of these MPLs on the regional league. And so there has been this integration along the way. A lot of that is through the work that you guys have done, of course, and all that. So that I think probably broke down a lot of some of the barriers that existed before, where there may have been, I wouldn't call it adversarial because it wasn't openly adversarial, but maybe broke down some of those barriers to help us get here.
Yeah, I think
Well,
somewhere around a third of the NPLs also are managing regional leagues on behalf of the ECNL. It's somewhere in that range, and more have been involved in a variety of conversations. And that was, to your point, Doug, that was all part of this, is that it isn't just always about us trying to pull levers. Sometimes we just need to make the meeting and get the right people in the rooms and get out of the way. And we've tried to do that, sometimes more successfully than others, because it's a balance of when do you stand in front of the room and lead and say, this is where we're going to go, and when do you get out of the way and let, the forces take us where it needs to go. And that's been a struggle. I think we've gotten it right more often than not, but we haven't gotten it right every time for sure. But we now hopefully have developed a relationship of trust where somebody can raise a legitimate question or concern, and we go, okay, let's dig into that a little bit. Let's understand it a little bit more because your challenges are different than another league's challenges, and how we manage that. So yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Is those relationships have helped us get to this point.
Yeah, let's put that in the context a little bit, and I don't want to spend much time going back in history, but I think it's helpful to some degree of, again, in 2006, just about every competitive club in the country all played within one national pyramid, which was the U.S. Youth Soccer na National Championships, regional leagues, and state leagues. 2007, that broke when the Development Academy took the best 40 clubs or 40 of the best boys clubs out of that pyramid at a couple of age groups. And from 2000 and 2009, the ECNL started to do that on the girls' side. And from 2007 to 2012, what you had was a rapid deconstruction of what was the single pyramid of youth club soccer as clubs went into the ECNL, they went into the Development Academy, and they started joining and creating new U.S. club soccer leagues. And that escalated dramatically in the last 10 years, where that pyramid has dramatically shrunk in size, certainly in quality in terms of the top teams. And what has happened on the U.S. club side, and if we look at U.S. club and the NPLs and the ECNL together, you've had a different pyramid now being rebuilt as this previous one was sort of deconstructed. And the challenges in that, and I think some of the reasons why this took a while, is as the ECNL grew, those clubs came from somewhere. Initially, it was mostly U.S. Youth Soccer. Then it came from other leagues and other sanctioning bodies. Then, Doug, first regional league was what, 2019?
A little before that.
A little before that.
It was right before we started the boys.
Then the ECNL starts the boys, which and the U.S. Soccer Development Academy and the girls starts. So the deconstruction kind of goes into ludicrous speed, as they would say in Spaceballs, the movie, great movie. But that sort of accelerates the deconstruction and reconstruction. The regional league then is added into that. And then you have a situation where clubs are now trying to find, where do I want to go? What is the appropriate level of competition for me? What is the appropriate league for me? Why would I go there? What is my pathway? Obviously, that in a country as big as ours, we've talked about this in so many podcasts, it's never exactly the same from one region to another. You have different opinions. You're in the middle of all this tumultuous change. And I think, as you said, it wasn't openly adversarial, but there was challenges as clubs decide what to do. One of the things, Mike, I think that you did really positively early on in your when you took over U.S. Club Soccer is bring these leagues together into a room and say, let's talk about this and let's get everybody into one conversation about what we're thinking and why we're thinking it and what we have concerns with. And that included ECNL in those rooms a lot of the time, not all the time. But before that, that wasn't happening a lot. And once that started to happen, you had people able to talk directly for the first time about where they see the market going, where they want it to go, identify where there's changes from one area to another. And all along while that's happening, we've had the ECNL and the Regional League growing, the NPLs growing, U.S. Club Soccer growing. Over time, I think we're getting more and more clubs into the right level of competition based on their performance. And it seemed that finally people said, hey, this is the reality generally of the market and the competitions. And we say that because there's always exceptions. There's always going to be a team that is not at a certain level that is playing above that level or below that level, because you can't speak in absolutes on this. But generally, the levels of play have been established across the country. Would you say that, Mike?
Well, generally, but the number of new leagues that seemingly are announced makes that murkier and murkier in terms of what is the level. When you're in something you may not exactly understand. I was probably a better ball player in my head than I was in reality. And so I think this is probably true of the leagues and where a team sits. The other piece of this, Christian, Doug, that personally I think is really important is there's been so much time and energy over the last 10 plus years, 20 years, whatever, focused on the top, and building out new club-based leagues. And personally, I just think there's too many teams and clubs playing in club-based leagues because they think that's what you're supposed to do to be a proper club. And to me, what you're supposed to do is put the teams and the players in the best environment for one, them to enjoy the sport, and two, to develop appropriately.
Where they have the most competitive games.
For sure. And so by, the work that's been done here, a lot of the teams that are now in the regional league were NPL teams and clubs, right? The expansion of that second division of a club-based competition, whereas the NPL 2012, 2013 was the top of the US club soccer pyramid. But at some point you can't hold on to what the past was. You have to look at what the current realities are. And to me, this was a perfect opportunity to recommit to the masses, to the most players possible, to create an opportunity to play in or play out of a given competition. So the connection now of the NPLs and the team-based competition into the club-based is a huge step forward for clubs who aspire to be there to understand what it is you're exactly going to. I can remember when I first got to Prince William back in 2013, and the first meeting I had was, we brought you here to help us get into the DA. And I said, well, are you sure? Are you sure that's what you really want to do? I don't think you understand what you're signing up for. So we went and did that, and then they went, oh God, this is really hard. Yes, it's really hard. And so today, that club, which is, half of VDA, is what it is. Top 10 Boys and Girls Club is a wonderful environment for Prince William County, led by wonderful people. But you still have this layer beneath the ECNL and beneath the Regional League where players are not being taken care of and not they're being put in a league that looks good on a chat room or looks good on X, but it isn't actually the best environment for all of these players. So the ability to recommit into team-based competition, and it won't exclusively be. We will still have NPLs that are club-based, and we still have some regional leagues that are team-based, and that's all well and good because local decisions made locally, that needs to happen in a country our size. But generally speaking, there are too many clubs and teams aspiring for a level of which they're not currently prepared, and giving them clarity on how do I get from where I am today to where I want to be was a huge part of this. And also, if you are in a place where you recognize, man, maybe this isn't where we should be, there's a softer landing spot so that when you do either opt out or get demoted, if you will, whatever you want to call that, it isn't completely damaging to your organization and club. It doesn't result in just a scattering and now you got to rebuild the thing. So all of this was part of what we were trying to do, and it started with trying to solve the NPL riddle on, okay, as ECNL is growing and expanding, both in terms of the number of clubs, but the levels of competition, where does the NPL fit, and how does it ultimately help provide a more connected environment for all of these clubs and teams that currently didn't exist in our mind. So that's kind of how we got to where we are today with this most recent announcement.
Well, and I would add to that U.S. club soccer is now, I think you'll say north of 800,000 players
Yeah.
that are within the leagues it sanctions and the clubs that participate in them. And there are other sanctioning bodies out there, U.S. Youth being one, MLS, GA, and there are a bunch of other leagues out there, but U.S. Club is the biggest in terms of the competitive numbers. And while we can't speak on behalf of other sanctioning bodies or federation members, there was an opportunity here within the 800,000 approaching, and I'm going to say approaching a million in the next year or two, players of US club to provide some clarity and to provide some stability within that and transparency as to what is the competition frameworks look like, what is different from one level to the next, why would you be in one level or another, that I think is a baseline to potentially reach out to do that across American soccer.
Yeah, a couple of things there. So U.S. club soccer has grown by double-digit percentage each of the last 4 years. So, 800,000 to a million, sure. Maybe that's where we're headed. We don't really focus on that. We let the numbers and registrations happen as a result of doing all the other things that you talked about earlier. Well. But yes, I think that our ability now to at least clarify, we're large enough that clarifying in U.S. clubland what it looks like seemed appropriate. Whereas even a few years ago when we were, 450, 500,000 players in a much smaller footprint, it really wouldn't have had the same impact. But now you're talking a decent number of players that now have clarity, at least within, our framework. The and this is a template for how we might, not saying we just pick it up and move it and it's going to work everywhere, but I don't think it's any secret that our relationship with U.S. youth soccer in particular is becoming better and better every day, and that we are very interested in solving riddles together. And so might this be something that helps in that regard, not just in terms of leagues and competitions, um, but also in terms of talent ID, whether it's ID2 or ODP or um, the state cups, coach education, all of those types of things that maybe can happen. But I think it's a challenge, as you and I talk about all the time, Christian. It's a little bit of a challenge to be in those rooms talking about how we might work together when we don't have a firm understanding of who we are and how we function or operate. So to be able to clean that up internally, I think gives us a better starting point for some of these conversations that we hope we get to have, or at least hope we can get across the line. And because at least we do have that starting point. And by the way, it's whether it's another organization member or another league that has ideas about how things we might consider doing differently or better. We of course are very open to that because that's how we got here. We started with a listening tour, largely just getting yelled at, quite frankly. And then as you draw on the information that's coming, not necessarily how it's delivered, but what's delivered, you start to hear the themes. Okay, these are the challenges that our leagues are facing. Let's go address them. And we expect that will be true of leagues and organizations that we're not currently working with, that they'll bring other ideas or better ideas to what we're doing, and we will to them as well, hopefully. So that's the goal. But now I think we have clarity. At least within U.S. club soccer, we understand how these things are connected, how a player, how a coach, how a team, how a club can progress through the pathways. Um, and the pyramid itself, I guess, is the diagram, but it really is that pathway. And by the way, we want referees to be a part of this soon as well as what is their pathway. to ensure that we have more of them for longer, and that they're developed even stronger, which is an area U.S. club soccer admittedly isn't overly engaged in yet, just simply because of the way the federation bylaws or excuse me, the policies are written.
You touched on the pyramid and the clarity and all that. How will, let's be kind of dig into how a player will feel this, because I think that's what does it look like for them, and maybe something that's been a little bit more disconnected in certain ways. Now that it's connected, how will the players and families and clubs and teams feel it?
Well, the immediate impact will probably just be more in the postseason and the way that the postseason will be integrated and connected. Longer term, what we're hoping is that it results in more games closer to home, more competitive games closer to home, where we're not having to travel past because we're chasing some status by saying that this league is, whatever you want to call it. And I think the other area that hopefully folks feel it is, I do think there are teams and clubs, maybe even in the regional league, that are there because, well, I need to be there. But it's not the best environment for them. And so, once you get a sense of not doing well, changing that's really hard.
Well, and on
Very
that,
hard.
I want to touch on that a little bit about the not doing well, or the environment, because and all of us have coached really good teams, and we've coached teams that are not in that definition. And we've all been parents of kids who play. And really what you want when you're talking about a soccer experience is you want competitive games. You want games where there is a reasonable chance to be successful, where you're going to lose some games. And occasionally, it's not a bad thing occasionally to get thumped. And it's not a bad thing to occasionally thump somebody else. But you certainly don't want to be in an environment where you're on a regular basis thumping or being thumped. That's not conducive to a generally pleasant experience. And it does make development, it may make development slow down or go faster, depending on which end you're on in some of those things, but it certainly raises some challenges. So one of the things I think that when you talk about eliminating teams that drive by other teams and making a better environment, it's trying to streamline the ability for performance to more quickly put people in the right spot. Because the other part to this is, as a soccer parent or a soccer player, there are certain types of traveling in soccer that are really fun and exciting and positive and necessary. And then there are times when soccer travel is not fun and you don't want to do it. And we want to make it unnecessary to do that. In order to do both of those things, you need more density, you need more collaboration, and you need better pathways. Doug, do you see that in the same way?
Yeah. Yeah, I do think it probably would be, and this is not to throw shade, I guess, at any of the comments that were made, but there is a need for high level competition for high level players, right? Like for like, and as naturally as you go up the pyramid, it gets smaller, right? And so that necessitates travel, or that necessitates,
Yep.
The appropriate resistance, as you like to say.
Yep.
And so I think it's striking that balance between some of the kind of insanity. I think to just blanketly say, well, we should all just play local games and everything would be fine, is probably an oversimplification of it.
Absolutely.
We would like to have the opportunity to do that when and where appropriate. But here is what this what U.S. Club Soccer has done it has created the access for us in that ecosystem to plug the right teams into the right places, right? And also by connecting it, what it will do is it will sort itself out, right? So it will kind of sort itself out where the teams will get where they need to be and therefore have access to the appropriate level, whatever.
So let's talk about that, and I'm sure Mike has some comments on it. So, and whenever we talk in more bright lines, you know, let's always put the caveat in there that, you know,
Right.
nothing's going to be perfect. But in general, what we're talking about is that the NPL is the top team-based competitive league in U.S. club soccer. When you have multiple teams performing at a high level in the NPL, that is where you start to look into a club-based competition. By a club-based competition, we mean teams playing at the same league level, common opponents at each age group, U13 and above. That is the regional league. When you have multiple teams performing really well in the regional league, then you are starting to look at the next club-based level, which is the ECNL. And within each of those leagues and levels, you have the annual start your season in August with the goal of trying to win a championship in June or July at the end of the season at each one of those age groups. And we can talk about the postseason here in a minute. But that also goes back to, Mike, I think your point that, as obvious as it sounds, not all clubs are created equal. It is hard to have high performing teams at every single age group. And there has got to be a recognition that for some communities, some clubs, having one or two really good teams playing at a good level doesn't mean you need to drag four other teams into a competition where they are not going to have a great experience. And so that also is part of this. When Doug, you say it'll sort itself out, that includes rising up and rising down. To ultimately, there'll probably be a metric on this where you can look at goal difference over the course of time and say, is that number of the average goal difference of a team in a league, is that different in 2027 or 2028 compared to what it was in 22, 24, 25? Does that make sense?
I think that obviously the teams are going to fly to Florida here this weekend and the next weekend. It's completely appropriate. It's necessary. It's required for those teams to go and get better competition in a showcase environment.
Hundreds of colleges,
and weather that generally is going to be conducive to playing soccer in January. You know, and by the way, the NPL teams who have a chance to go to Denver in July, and combine it with some sort of soccer tourism, if you will, and you know, you take the family, they love those experiences, and that's not what we're talking. What we're talking about is a random weekend in September. You know, and if you think about the NPL level, generally speaking, in U.S. club soccer, that's going to be somebody's first team, second team, third team, or maybe even fourth or fifth team, depending upon, you know, a mega club that has multiple entries in ECNL or ECNL Regional League. And so that competition level, the further you get away from your top team, I don't care what club you are, the bigger the dispersion of talent is, and the harder it is to have competitive games club v club. You know, even if you take the best ECNL clubs in the country and take 13 to 19 boys and girls, their third teams, and match them up, that may or may not be a very good fixture.
yeah.
And so at this level, now you allow the individual team, and again, some of these are going to be more boutique, smaller club, you know, where you don't even have, you know, a full recreational program. You don't have, you know, 3 and 4 teams in an age group. It's just a couple of random teams and let those teams find their appropriate level. That's what I'm talking about is the random weekend where instead of getting on a bus to go stay in a hotel to play a game that is not any better than you can get generally in town. And there's parts of the country where, population and density is a real thing and you're just going to have to travel. I lived in the Midwest, for many years. I understand that. Um, so how we manage that competition has been a challenge because everybody wants to go and compete, if you will, we're going to form a new league that competes against the ECNL. And what we're saying is, no, that's sorted. We understand that within U.S. club soccer, ECNL is ECNL. And so one of the things that I was somewhat involved in at the very beginning of the form of the regional leagues was, it did provide very real opportunities for clubs to earn their way in. We had Beach here in Virginia, came into the regional league, won like 80% of the age groups. And I think like 3 of the 4 older girls state cups and the whole thing. And the next year they're in the ECNL.
And by the way, just to add on that, Mike, in the last 4 years, 58 clubs have been promoted from the Regional League to the ECNL. Not quite 50-50 boys and girls, but not too different. And that supports that pathway that you're talking about.
And so now what we're talking about is, okay, what's the layer beneath how do I even get into the regional league versus an application and decisions, some of which ECNL may get right and some of which ECNL maybe didn't have all the data. But when you're now in like for like competition and in the postseason, when the best NPL teams are going to be competing against regional league teams in the postseason, now it's merit. Much more merit-based decisions on what that pathway looks like. And to us, that clarification, it was really important because we wanted to make sure that if a club was saying, I want to be in the ECNL, but I'm currently not even in a regional league. I'm currently maybe in an NPL or maybe even not. How do I get there? This is how you do it. At least within U.S. club soccer. And that doesn't lock ECNL to not being able to make the decisions it needs to make. But it clearly provides a much more transparent process for these decisions to
More
be made.
Objective competition
More objective
data.
Yeah.
And I think that competition is one of our 6 league values, right? Is that there has to be competition embedded into everything. And what that fundamentally means at this point is that clubs need to have pathways. And that pathway has to reward merit and performance and improvement. And to the opposite end, if clubs are not performing consistently, they to your point earlier, we don't want to keep clubs in positions that are not positive for players and teams. And again, this doesn't mean that there's the annual mathematical equation of promotion and relegation that people think of in English and European soccer or whatever it may be. But what it means is that there's going to be more data, more connectivity, and more ability to move based on that performance, which is good for the sport. It is good for the future of the sport and the development of better and better players, coaches, and clubs.
Yeah, the sheer size and breadth of our country is in and of itself inherently challenging in this regard, right? What did we say when we were over in London recently, Christian? Didn't they say 78 UKs would fit into the United States?
Yeah, I think it was.
So
England was like the size of Iowa or something like that.
Yeah. So there's geographical challenges to go with that. So let me ask you this, Mike, because I know what we see, but what's the feedback been like since this has gone out from your perspective?
Yeah, it's obviously the Christmas break, so feedback to me is trickling in. I don't go hunting on socials for the nonsense that exists sometimes there. But generally, our understanding is the feedback has been good, where it's understood what we're trying to accomplish. I think folks appreciate at least the work that's being done at this level of the game, because there hasn't been a ton of focus maybe, or as much focus as maybe it deserves, for these players and clubs and teams. But yeah, I think it's been what we expected and what we had hoped for. I don't know, Christian or Doug, if you're hearing any different, but those are the reports I'm getting, from our team at US Club Soccer. Is it's um, in a good way, fairly predictable response.
Well, it's the old, I think it's Yogi Berra. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Yeah, right.
And so for us to now have a road and say, listen, if you want to know where you're going or why within the season in terms of performance and winning championships, which we've talked about this before, it's really important that kids and teams at all levels fight to win, want to win. And then over the course of multiple seasons, as we talk about moving up levels, the other issue to this is, and everything's got pros and cons, and we try and make the best decisions we can internally, and then also when we're interfacing with the broader youth soccer space in U.S. club soccer, and then even outside of it at times. But right now, you referenced the NPL, so 18 to 21 leagues, depending on boys, girls, one year to the next. Currently, those teams go straight to the NPL finals in Colorado, which means it's a smaller number of teams that get to a postseason. That requires for most of them a flight. And there's positives to that in terms of the soccer tourism and the beauty of Colorado in the summer and the excitement there. And my club has had multiple teams be in Colorado with U.S. club competitions in the National Cup. And I'm sure we've all had teams in clubs going to the NPL finals. But one of the positives of the integration now is that we're going to take Regional League and NPL teams and put them into regionalized postseason competitions so that more teams will get a postseason experience. Many of it, I want to say most, will be drivable in that stage. So there's lower cost for those teams to extend the season, and extending the season has developmental positives to it in terms of meaningful training and meaningful games. We're starting in 27 with 4 of these regionalized playoffs with the
Fall of
understanding.
26, fall of 26, summer of 27, right?
Correct. Sorry. So I'm talking about the 26-27 season. Yeah, you're right. So summer of 27. When we get to the postseason, that's the season starts August 1, 26, and when we get to the postseason in the summer of 27, 4 regionalized events that will bring regional league teams and NPL teams into a postseason, with the understanding that we will expand that for the summer of 28, likely to 6, maybe more. And so what we will see in the postseason is you'll have the ECNL playoffs, you'll have the Regional League playoffs, and you'll have these integrated playoffs. And it'll provide more teams drivable competition, apples to apples competition, really good competition, all of which we think is positive for the player experience, positive for the development in terms of extending the season for more teams a little longer for improvement and growth, and positive for the opportunity then to measure, compare, and ultimately move clubs along the pathway.
I think it's a really important point, one that you and I have talked about and other club directors have brought to my attention over the last couple of years, is regardless of what level of competition you are, if you are the first team out, the first team who didn't make a playoff, you're losing 3 to 4 weeks of development and competition that the team just above you is getting. And by having more teams with the opportunity to play into the second, third, fourth week of June, whatever that's going to be, more teams and more kids will be playing longer. More coaches will be coaching longer. More referees will be officiating higher level matches longer. And we think that that can raise the bar. Now, at the same time, the challenges that now exist that didn't exist when you laid out the timeline of pre-DA, Christian, where there was never a time before DA where a team didn't earn a pathway to regionals or nationals and opted out. That never happened. And now across all competitions, the percentage of teams that are opting out of postseason is greater than zero. And so it may be not at the ECNL level, but certainly below that it is. And so that's also going to be part of this is how do we figure out where is that right level, but offering more chances for teams to train and play longer is a good thing.
Well, and Mike, that's a great feedback point because if you have high opt-outs, what the market is telling you is that the structure isn't working for one reason or another. And we look at that every year when we look at playoffs
Sure.
at all levels. And I know the NPL has and others do as well. But you can do two things with that. You can just ignore it, or you can look and say, well, the market's telling me something about what the player, the family, the coach wants. And so, again, doing this the way that we envision it, of providing longer seasons that are drivable and unique experiences, ultimately we hope will result in a improved level of all sorts of parts of the game.
And experiences that more kids and families and clubs, teams, coaches, referees getting experiences that they might not otherwise get. And another important piece of this is one of the reasons, it's important, the integration is important, is because the look and the feel of the postseason, ECNL will manage the postseasons on the collaborative's behalf. And so the look and feel of those experiences should be eerily similar to the Regional League and to the ECNL competitions so that these families get those experiences. And for me, I think it's hugely beneficial.
So, Mike, as we kind of wrap here, look in your crystal ball about, over the
These
next.
are not the droids you're looking for.
I was just about to say that. You took it.
Over the next, 12 to 18 to 24 months, where could this go in your mind?
I'm incredibly
Not
optimistic.
a leading question at all.
Yeah,
Hey.
yeah. I will just say what I said to our leagues in October, and I feel it more today than I even did then. I think that I've not been more encouraged about the work that is being done, and I understand, Twitter's going to explode over this. If, when are we going to see what's going on? But the work that's being done behind the scenes to address so many of these friction points and issues that are very prevalent in our sport is happening. We are very active participants and are strongly supporting that work. What we have done here is the culmination of multiple years within U.S. club soccer, but I'm extremely hopeful. It's a dangerous place to be, is hope, but I'm extremely hopeful that this expands to incorporating more teams, more clubs, more organizations in a way that is meaningful and positive, and without maybe some of the conflict that has existed in recent memory, because I think regardless of what organization you're a part of, I don't think anybody thinks the way that the sport is functioning right now is maximizing our potential. I would say that. But I do think, Doug, that, well, we are absolutely very open and want to work with others. And I have a strong feeling that we will be working with others in a very meaningful and positive way shortly.
I think Mike's saying 2026 is going to be an exciting year potentially.
Well, don't spoil my Bracken Brain Buster, Christian, by doing that.
Well, before you pivot to the Bracken Brainbuster, I wanna comment because I think it's important to address both ends of the continuum in some way. We're talking about pathways collaboration, consolidation, integration, all that stuff on this podcast. At the same time, I think it's important to highlight that we're also looking at what do the top players need and how do we reward and challenge and provide the appropriate resistance for those players. And so those are two different things. Some of it, a lot of it can be the same in terms of concepts. Some of it is different, right? And so we are also simultaneously solving that riddle and continually looking to improve that side of the sport. You've seen that, with the announcement also that just came out a couple days ago, is the teams going to Everton for the ECNL International Tournament in association with the Coach's Voice, where they'll be playing Chelsea, Everton, Welsh national team on the girls' side, Leeds. Where it's going to be an incredible challenge for boys and girls to do that. We're about to announce another major international competition here. Not a couple days down the road, which is also geared towards trying to provide increased resistance, increased exposure, increased challenge for the top. And I think that's the ongoing balance that we're going to have to do here at ECNL, US Club Soccer, and everybody else, is make sure that we're creating pathways that bring people in and reward performance, and at the same time providing additional experiences, opportunities, and challenges for the very, very best.
I'll add to that because I think, just a little bit of behind the scenes work is the way that we've collectively looked at this in terms of the competitions that Christian just laid out is, US Club Soccer has doubled its investment into ID2. We're investing well over $1 million a year in ID2. And so, there used to be a variety of different projects that ECNL ran that were player centric.
Yep.
In terms of identifying, selecting, and going and competing, etc. And so, just a little bit more about the strength of the relationship is that ECNL, and you guys correct me if I have this wrong, is now focused on the team pathway.
Yeah.
The teams perform during the course of the year. They'll have an opportunity to go compete internationally. Our focus in ID2, working with ECNL and all of our NPLs, and you don't have to be a US club player. If we identify it, we'll bring in, is about the player, is about the coach. It's about the individual pathway. And so, we'll be announcing later this spring what we're doing with our international trip. But it will, we're very excited about where that is going, but you can see how all of the integration, the relationships are complementing one another. So ECNL can go focused on the competitions, go focused on the clubs, the teams, and US Club Soccer from a talent identification and individual player development will do that work. And I think it's another hand in glove example of ways that we have worked over the last 4+ years to make more sense of a fairly complicated world.
Well, and the growth of both of our organizations has helped provide more resources to those things.
Correct.
And then the more clear separation of which organization is doing what has allowed more to be invested in each of those appropriately over the last couple of years, which is another benefit of having this type of consolidation, integration, and efficiency.
All right, well, that's good stuff. Quickly hear from our partners, and we'll come back from the Bracken Brainbuster. Might be a two-parter. I don't know if Christian's brain can handle it.
Never heard that before.
He's known to have a very small
tolerance for change.
Yeah. So, Discount Tire. Want the same expert advice from the pros at a discount tire store while shopping online? Meet Treadwell, your personal tire guide. Whether you're driving to practice or game day, Treadwell gives you tire recommendations based on your vehicle, location, and driving habits. Get matched with the perfect tires so you can stay focused on the goals that matter most. Shop with Treadwell at discounttire.com. Score big with Continental Tire. Prioritize your safety on the road with our thoroughly tested tires for top-notch traction handling and durability. Drive with confidence. Find your dealer at continentaltire.com.
Is here, Doug, where I interrupt you and say it's nice to have such a nice connection to the tire industry as we talk about these pathways?
Today's about tires. These tires can get you down the pathway that you're looking for.
There you go. All the way to the ECNL finals, the RL finals, the NPL finals. All those finals are paved by Continental Tires, bought at Discount Tire.
Continental Tire, the smart choice in tires, Christian.
There we go. Look at that.
Smart choice. All right. Jacob will join us, crack producer. Today's question, I'm going to just go one part because I don't want to hurt anybody at the end of the year. Give me any soccer prediction for 2026. Could be related to youth soccer, or could be, whatever. And Jacob, I know this is not totally fair to you.
I think it's fair.
You are not but
I'm a soccer enjoyer.
Okay. Yes, you are a soccer enjoyer. I'm a soccer worker, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So, soccer prediction 2026. Our esteemed guest, Mike Cullina, you get to go first.
This is a dangerous question for me. I think by the end of the World Cup, American youth soccer will make a whole lot more sense.
Okay, cryptic, but
it's a prediction.
It's a prediction.
It's not a fact. It's just a prediction. I think that with the work that's being done by U.S. Soccer and others, and the desire by multiple different organizations to have a world that makes more sense, I think we get there.
Okay. I love this optimism.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to Jacob.
It's not normal for me, but we'll be optimistic today because it's
the last few
season.
times I've seen you, you've been very optimistic. That's good. It's good. Jacob Bourne, what you got?
I'm going to give a few predictions here.
Wow.
One is I'm going to say the ECNL is going to crown its first ever pre-ECNL champion. I am confident in that prediction.
Okay.
I think the U.S. men's national team is going to advance out of its group, and it's going to win its group in the World Cup. I think St. Louis City SC is going to make the MLS playoffs, but they're not going to win a game.
That would be a miracle.
And I think Tottenham is going to finish 10th in the Premier League.
That would be very predictable.
Yes.
I guess you could say you're a Tottenham fan, I guess?
I am a Spurs fan.
Thomas Frank, yes, or Thomas Frank, no?
I think he has done well with the team that he has. I think he's been a little hindered by Son leaving. I think Postecoglou had to go, even though he won Europa League, which is just a hilarious sentence. But overall, we talked about it on a few podcasts ago. The coaching turnover in the EPL is just so massive, and Tottenham has just been rudderless since Ponch left. So I don't think Frank is the long-term answer.
Could be organizational.
It's true.
Problem.
I mean, and ownership's gone too. So we'll see how the team does. But yeah, ever since the Champions League loss to Liverpool, it has been a steady slope downward until the Europa win last year.
It's a good day for me.
That was a good day for you.
My business partner and Mike Cullen, Tim Lesiak, was at that game. He went to that game.
That's a good game to be at.
Well, he was very disappointed because he's a Barcelona fan, and they lost, obviously, on the miracle Liverpool semifinal comeback.
Yeah.
And Ajax was on the other side, and he was really hoping for Barcelona Ajax. So
yeah, I was sprinting up and down the Iowa Wild press box when Lucas Moura scored the third goal, because it was like an hour before a Wild playoff game. And I was in a full suit sprinting up and down because we had won. That was a great game. Great day, great game.
All right, Christian Lavers. Soccer prediction for 2026.
A prediction of 26. I don't know if I can predict that I'll go to a World Cup game because I'm going to go back to the ticket issues. But what I
Christian, I got
hope,
you. I'll get you to a game.
there we go. What I
Can I
hope,
come?
Yeah. Can we,
Can I
yeah,
come
Got
to-
anything,
everybody?
Jacob and Doug, I got nothing for
Can
you.
I come
the
to-
irony is, do you know the number of people that ask me if I have connections for tickets? And I'm like,
It's
I've been told
unbelievable.
by everybody to use whatever tool you can get to get your own tickets.
Yeah.
But my hope is going to be that by the end of 2026, college soccer makes more sense than college football does today, because college football is in a crazy, unsustainable disaster.
Get rid of the conferences, break away, get a commissioner, run it like you're trying to.
Yeah, well, and
pretend
I'm
like you're not
hoping,
running.
I'm
Well,
hoping
except college football is 99.9% American.
well, there's
That's
part of
facts.
the logic, right?
We
So
talked about that
look at
a
college
lot.
basketball. They just signed a European pro to Baylor.
well,
Did I read a stat? The last 5 MVPs in the NBA are European or foreign?
That is correct.
maybe they need a pathways committee. What I will say then is
We
that
start losing gold medals, by the way, in basketball, and you watch how quick that
yeah,
that turns.
what I will
Nobody
say
will
is
stand for that.
hopefully, if Mike is right that youth soccer makes more sense in 2026, I think then that shifts a big focus to making college soccer make more sense in terms of structure and opportunity and length of season for the American player.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before, and I don't know, not to get off on a tangent, but I don't know what Mike thinks about this, but it's to me like our biggest gap in development, especially on the men's side, because of the way boys develop and can develop later, but don't really have, there's this kind of dead period because there's not the same opportunity to move on to the college game and, be a late developer or whatever, right? I think it's huge if we can get that connected into our system.
All right, Doug, what about you?
My prediction is going to be two things. I'm going to go U.S. men's national team quarterfinalists. Quarterfinalists, I'm calling it, at home. I want to say semifinals, but I'm not there yet. So I'm going to go quarterfinalists. And then I'm going to say Cincinnati, Ohio gets an NWSL franchise. Cincinnati, Ohio. And Rose Lavelle comes to play in Cincinnati. That's my
You're
soccer
getting pretty
prediction.
Specific, getting pretty
Soccer.
granular.
Yes, soccer prediction. Like Rose Lavelle has this deep love for Cincinnati. It's kind of weird, but
Is
she
Doug
does.
Bracken the head coach?
Nope.
Oh,
No. That will.
I was
that
wondering
will-
how
I
deep
can-
we were going on these
yeah, I
predictions.
can confirm
Yeah.
that will never happen.
He'll be watching the game, eating some chili with noodles, which makes no sense.
That's right.
Never.
Skyline chili is delicious.
It's so gross.
It is. Mike, where are you at on Skyline chili? For it.
Completely in.
Completely in.
Oh.
Completely in.
Completely in.
Yeah.
It's kind of
We
a
were-
love-hate kind of thing.
Yeah, we were just in Cincinnati a couple of weeks ago and had to make a couple of stops. My daughter's there now, actually, with the kids she grew up with, and sent us a picture from Skyline last night. And yeah, we're in. We're in on
At
Skyline.
my Skyline in Milford, I don't even have to order.
Right.
Me and my kids sit down and they bring us what they always bring us.
Yeah. 3-way and 2
That-
cheese conies. Done. That's the
deep.
order.
So this is going off the rails right now.
Off the rails.
All
Well,
right, well, that's a wrap to 2025. Christian,
a good year.
it's been a good year.
It was a very good year.
Good year.
Here's to 26 and all sorts of excitement. I sense that January is going to be exciting.
Mhm.
It always is. I will just like to say this before we close to Mike, because Mike, I've known Mike for many years, and just appreciate your partnership with ECNL and all your support. It's been great. we can do a lot more together than we can when we're not. So thank you for your support, for coming on the podcast and listening to Christian go on and on for an hour. Now you know what I do every 2 weeks.
Well, likewise, I greatly appreciate you guys and the entire team at ECNL. I think if Christian and I have talked about many a time when you take like-minded, well-run organizations and work together, the multiplying impact is significant. And I think that's what we're seeing currently within U.S. Club Soccer is we're more aligned in the way that we're thinking, not just ECNL and U.S. Club Soccer, but all of our NPLs who are critically important to our success as well. So thank you to everybody. Certainly appreciate you, Doug, and the entire ECNL team.
Amen to that.
Happy New Year, everybody. We'll see
Happy
you
New
in a couple
Year.
weeks.